Africa has just done something the West never believed was possible. Not in 20 years. Not in 10. Not even in 5. It happened now, quietly, strategically, and shockingly fast. A new financial system is rising, and for the first time in modern history, Africa is sitting at the head of the table. BRICS, once dismissed as a loose collection of developing nations, has officially made Africa the new center of global finance, with a radical plan to reshape how the world trades, borrows, and builds wealth. Imagine a world where African nations no longer go to Washington or Europe for loans, but instead control their own World Bank backed by African gold, African oil, African rare minerals, African energy grids, African digital currency networks, and Africa's fastest-growing populations and markets. For the first time ever, the continent isn't just a resource supplier. It's the banker, the shareholder, and the power broker. Western analysts are calling this the largest financial shock of the century. Because what BRICS just set in motion doesn't merely shift power, it erases the old system. And here's the part that has Washington, London, and Brussels in full-blown panic. Africa now controls the world's most important assets. Not metaphorically, literally. 80% of global cobalt, 90% of platinum, 70% of manganese, 50% of gold imports, 40% of proven gas reserves, a $3 trillion mineral market, a $16 trillion consumer market by 2050. Every single industry of the future, AI, electric vehicles, robotics, aerospace, quantum computing, energy storage, depends on minerals that Africa owns. So BRICS made its move. They locked in dozens of African partnerships, from East to West Africa, from the Sahel to Southern Africa. And for the first time, the financial center of the global South isn't Beijing or Moscow or New Delhi. It's Africa. And in today's video, we're diving deep into how BRICS built Africa's new financial empire, why the West has no replacement strategy, how this shifts global power permanently, what this new system means for your future, and why Africa just became the most valuable continent on Earth. This isn't just a news story. It's the beginning of a new global order. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will completely rewrite everything you thought you knew about world power, money, and Africa's place in the future. For over a century, global finance was controlled by a handful of Western institutions: the IMF, the World Bank, the SWIFT payment system, and major U.S. and European banks. They decided who received loans, who got sanctioned, who was allowed to trade, which currencies dominated, and which nations were classified as developing or first world. But something radical just happened. BRICS, the global alliance originally formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later joined by South Africa, has now expanded into a financial superstructure that is rapidly pulling power away from the West. Their newest and most powerful move: establishing Africa as the new global financial center of the BRICS world. Not as a side partner, not as a symbolic member, but as the foundation of a brand new financial system. Why Africa? Because Africa holds the key to the 21st century economy, and BRICS knows it. For over 60 years, Western nations treated Africa like a commodity warehouse, extracting minerals, controlling currency, dictating imports and exports, and managing debt structures. But here's the critical detail. While the West was distracted by wars, inflation, debt, and political chaos, Africa was building the African Continental Free Trade Area, the Pan-African Payment System, Africa's own credit rating agencies, nationalized mining strategies, sovereign wealth funds, gold-backed currency initiatives, debt for mineral swaps, new military alliances, and a unified digital transportation and energy grid. While Western institutions argued about interest rates, Africa quietly took control of the world's most valuable resources. BRICS saw this clear as day. The West didn't. BRICS isn't expanding into Africa. BRICS is moving its financial headquarters to Africa. BRICS bank branches across Africa. The new development bank has already opened offices in South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Algeria, and more are planned. BRICS payment system backed by African minerals. Instead of the US dollar, the new financial system uses gold, rare minerals, oil, national currencies. Africa is the world's largest source of all four. China and India relocating financial infrastructure to Africa, manufacturing, banking, energy, financial domination. Africa now has all three. African nations adding their currencies to BRICS digital network. This ends dependency on Western banks entirely. BRICS investment funds financing African infrastructure, ports, railways, roads, power grids, AI centers, agriculture, all funded without Western loans. This is why Western economists are panicking. Africa is no longer borrowing from the West. It's partnering with BRICS and building its own wealth. Three unstoppable forces make this shift permanent. Africa runs the world's mineral economy. Electric vehicles, data centers, batteries, solar grids, aerospace, AI hardware. Every future industry requires resources Africa controls. No EVs without African cobalt. No AI data centers without African copper. No solar panels without African quartz. No aerospace without African titanium. No 5G without African rare earths. This gives Africa more leverage today than Saudi Arabia had with oil in the 1970s. BRICS understands this. The West is only now realizing it. Africa is the world's new population and talent engine. By 2050, 1 in 4 people on Earth will be African. Africa will have the world's largest workforce. African megacities will dominate global consumption. This means more buyers, more innovation, more productivity, more economic growth, more entrepreneurship, and BRICS is positioning itself to be the main financial partner. Africa is the last great undeveloped economic frontier. This is key. While Europe shrinks and the US hits demographic stagnation, Africa has land, energy, population growth, resources, expanding infrastructure, political realignment, rising middle class. BRICS sees a continent ready to explode economically. The West sees risk. BRICS sees opportunity. The Western financial system depends heavily on dollar supremacy, control over global lending, control over trade, control over SWIFT, control over global interest rates. BRICS plus Africa just created alternatives to all five. BRICS Pay, BRICS digital currency, African continental payment system, gold-backed trade settlements, bilateral currency swaps, non-dollar oil contracts, non-Western loan facilities. The moment Africa began using these systems, the Western financial monopoly began to collapse. Washington now fears the dollar losing global demand, sanctions becoming useless, U.S. Treasury bonds losing buyers, Western banks losing dominance, African markets shifting eastward, BRICS controlling the world supply chain. This isn't theory. It's happening now. Here is the new reality. Africa minerals energy production, China manufacturing investment tech, India services engineering software, Russia energy logistics security, Middle East BRICS oil wealth funds trade routes. Together, they create a parallel global system. The West is no longer at the center. Africa is. This changes everything. Africa will trade in gold-backed currencies. Western sanctions will lose power. Africa will set mineral prices, not the West. Global companies will move to Africa. Africa becomes the bridge between East and West. A new world order forms. With Africa as a founding pillar and the biggest shift, Africa will finally control African wealth. A new global power has risen. For centuries, Africa was excluded from global decision-making. Not anymore. BRICS has rewritten the rules. And Africa is now the financial engine of the global South. The world is changing. Money is changing. Power is changing. And Africa is leading the transformation. This isn't the end of Western dominance, but it is the beginning of global balance. And for the first time in modern history, Africa is not waiting for permission. Africa is writing the future.